XPENG! Sounds cool, right? Especially with that Mortal Kombat-like voice. Well, is it a Mortal Kombat-like voice? It doesn't matter because the voice is wrong. Officially, it is not XPENG, it is XiaoPeng. But the press guy of XiaoPeng also said XPENG, so I am a bit confused. From now on, I will just say XPENG and not XiaoPeng. So sorry XiaoPeng if XPENG is not XPENG. You get it? Anyway, XPENG, another Chinese car brand, or well, they like to call themselves technology brand, just like NIO, that you maybe haven't heard of. First, they released the XPENG G3 in Norway. That one is still sold there. Then they tried here in the Netherlands with the XPENG P5. Not a great success, not sold here anymore. And now they are going to try with two other cars. A big SUV, the XPENG G9, and this one, the XPENG P7. So let's get to it. Hello there monsters and men, ladies and people. This is the XPENG P7 and welcome to Recharging. I hear you thinking, another Chinese car company. How long will this one last? Well, let me tell you a little secret. I cannot predict the future. Yes, I know, surprisingly right, surprisingly shocking. But I cannot predict the future. But an early investor in XPENG was Alibaba. And also in 2023, Volkswagen invested 700 million into XPENG. So I have good hopes for XPENG, but only time will tell. Anyway, let's talk about the car. Let's talk about the P7. There are two versions of the P7. There is the long-range version. That one can do 0 to 100 in around 6.7 seconds. And there is this version, the performance version, with all-wheel drive. The long-range version only has rear-wheel drive. So, performance, all-wheel drive, and 0 to 100 in 4.1 seconds. Yeah, now we're talking. All XPENGs are limited to 200 kilometers an hour. Well, that is a lie actually. The specifications tell me that they are limited to 200 kilometers an hour, but I tested it, and the real top speed of the XPENG P7 is around 206 kilometers an hour. Yeah, that is insanely quick, insanely quick. And actually I was lying to you, because there is another version of the XPENG P7 that is based on this performance version, and that is the wing edition. And yes, that car has wing doors. I mean, that is amazingly cool, but it is a gimmick and not worth the money to me, but it looks amazing. So how big is the XPENG P7? Is it a competitor to the Tesla Model 3 or the Tesla Model S? Well, in terms of size, it sits nicely between those two cars. But then, in terms of price, because for 50,000 euros you have a pretty much fully loaded long-range XPENG P7. So that means in terms of price it is a competitor to, for example, a Tesla Model 3. The XPENG P7, a long sedan with quite a large bonnet, as you can see. So there must be a frunk under here, right? Well, let's have a look. I haven't looked myself yet, so this will be a surprise for me as well. I have to do this twice, so then it will open, close the door. And yes, there are leaves, but there is no frunk, no. This is the performance version, so that means there is an extra electric motor under here. But the press guy of XPENG told me that before the facelift there was a frunk. But now the XPENG P7 has a heat pump as standard, and apparently that takes all the space off the frunk. I think if they tried a little bit harder, they could have fitted a frunk in here. And to be honest, I am not sure if the long-range version, which doesn't have a motor in here, still has a frunk. But anyway, let's have a look at the rear. And also the rear of the XPENG P7 is really good looking, if you ask me. XPENG did a really good job with the design of this car. But then, let's talk practicality, because as I have already said, this is a sedan. And in most sedans, the boot space is not that great. And this XPENG P7 is no exception. If I open up the boot, which you can do by this little button up here, you will see a boot opening just like the Tesla Model 3, a sedan opening, and not a liftback like the Tesla Model S. The boot space itself is 440 liters, which for a car of this size is not that amazing. Under the boot floor you cannot store anything, there's no space under there, but you can fold down the rear seats. You cannot do that from the boot, so if you want to fold down your rear seats, you have to walk to your rear seats, but at least you can fold them. And then you have a boot space of, I don't know, because there are no official numbers for that. So let's have a look at the rear seats then. All right, then the rear seats. The first thing that I notice is that the quality in here is really good. It is a really nice place to be in. Good materials are being used and there's even some ambient lighting back here. Again, a really nice place to be in. Really comfortable seats. Then the space. The seat in front of me is in my typical driving position. I am 1 meter and 85 centimeters. I have plenty of knee room. Headroom though is not that great. People taller than me will touch this very nice glass panoramic roof. Besides that, the car is relatively low and well, there has to be a battery pack under there. So that means the floor is relatively high. So I don't have a lot of support under my legs. I can also not shove my feet under the seat in front of me. Besides that, the car is wide enough for 3 people to sit in, but there is a hump here in the middle. Then there are pockets here behind the seats. There is an air vent, a USB-A port, a USB-C port, and there is an armrest with 2 cup holders. And even though I am driving the performance version of the P7 is not a sports car. No, this car is made for the long cruises to eat those kilometers away. And it can do that really, really well. The car is quiet, the car is comfortable, the car feels planted on the road even at higher speeds. Okay, I have to admit, at really high speeds, and then I am talking 180 kilometers an hour plus, the car gets a bit light at the front, but for most people this is not an issue. And at 130, 140 kilometers an hour, again, the car still feels planted on the road and feels stable. Also, good driving position, good seats, at least for me these are good seats, because I can imagine for the really long Europeans the seat itself is a bit short. For me personally this is not an issue, but again, if you're taller than me this might be an issue. And also one thing that my wife noticed is that the seats are really sporty, they really hug you, but for her the seats were too narrow. She wasn't really comfortable in them. And if she wasn't, well, then maybe you aren't as well. So just sit in the car and experience the seats for yourself. And again, decide for yourself if they are comfortable or not. For me they are, for my wife for example, they are not. And yes, of course, if you want to, you can drive fast, especially with this performance version. I mean, doing a sprint at a traffic light with this car, huge fun. Again, you can drive fast, you can drive sporty. The car gives you enough confidence for that. It has plenty of grip, but it isn't made for it. It doesn't get exciting. The car doesn't invite you to do that. No, use it to eat those kilometers away and you have a really good car. Do I have no complaints at all then? Well, yes, I do. On the short bumps, the suspension can get a bit bouncy and the visibility to the rear is really terrible. Huge C-pillars, very tiny rear window. Yes, you do have very good cameras, but in this kind of weather, when there is all kinds of smooch on the cameras, well, they are useless. This car has XPilot, the online multiplayer space action game. No, of course, it doesn't have that, but when Googling XPilot, that was the first result that I got. No, XPilot is the name for all the autonomous driving systems in this car. And this car has all systems that you can expect from a modern car. And in general, they work well. Only some things are still calibrated for the Chinese market. For example, the adaptive cruise control. When you set the distance to the shortest distance, the distance to the car in front of you is still huge. Too huge for European standards. Luckily, XPENG knows this, and well, it is all software, so it can be fixed with a software update, and it will probably be fixed in the future. But for now, the distance, it's just too much. It's too much. And also, and I am not so sure if XPENG will fix this, and this is also a thing that is probably calibrated for the Chinese market, is that I cannot engage XPilot when I am driving faster than 130 kilometers an hour. I mean, why is that? I really do not understand those things. So Germans, I'm really sorry, no cruise control for you on the Autobahn. The P7 always has a 83 kWh battery pack, and this performance version, according to the WLTP, can do 505 kilometers on that 83 kWh. Want a more efficient P7? Go for the long range version, because the long range version, according to the WLTP, can do 576 kilometers on that same 83 kWh. If you ask me, go for the long range version, because performance is fun, efficiency is better. But can the P7 actually do those numbers in the real world? Well, I think it can. During my test periods, it is late autumn, the conditions are not that great. It is between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius, and there is quite a bit of wind these days. But when driving on mixed roads, I can do with this performance version around 450 kilometers on one single charge. Driving on the highway, it is more around 400 kilometers. Driving faster on the highway, 130 kilometers an hour, I can do around 300 kilometers with this performance version. Of course, the long range version can go further. But in spring or summer weather conditions, I do think, yes, that you can do 500 kilometers with this XPENG P7 Performance. The XPENG P7 is an efficient car, and yes, I do like efficient cars. What about the electric driving features then? Well, you have a normal regen mode and a high regen mode, and there is something called X-pedal. And yes, I hear you thinking, X-pedal, that sounds like one pedal drive mode. But no, this car does not have a one pedal drive mode. If I read the description of X-pedal, I would guess it is a one pedal drive mode. But it is not. Actually, I do not feel any difference between high regen mode and X-pedal in terms of regeneration. Yes, in X-pedal the car is slower on the accelerator, so I don't like it. So yeah, I don't see the purpose of X-pedal at the moment. The navigation system though does plan charging stops when your destination exceeds your range. And also when you navigate to a fast charger, the car will actively preheat the battery to get you the best fast charging speed. If you don't navigate to a fast charger, but you do want to preheat the battery, there is actually a button in the infotainment system to manually preheat the battery. That is awesome. Look at this poor thing. Another neglected 50 kilowatt FSZ charger. Let's give it some love. The XPENG P7 has a very fancy motorized charge port though. As you can see now, yeah, very fancy. What the XPENG also likes to do is beeping. Beeping. Alright, that's it. Next chapter. No, I will give you some information. Yes. The XPENG P7 has a 11 kilowatt onboard charger as standard. Charging it from 0 to 100% will take you around 10 hours. Fast charging can be done with a maximum speed of 185 kilowatts. Charging it from 10 to 80% will take you around 25 to 30 minutes. Alright, finally a new car brand that does not pretend or does not want to be premium. But I have to say though, and yes, it is not BMW or Mercedes level in here, but again, they do not pretend to be, but the interior of the XPENG P7 is really nice. Good materials are being used. The build quality feels rock solid. Again, it is just a very pleasant place to be in. Although you do not have to be afraid of the dark, because it is really dark in this interior. A lot of black is being used. And this interior is the same like a lot of other modern car interiors, in the sense that you have a screen in front of the driver for your driving information, and there is a big screen here in the middle for basically everything. Besides that, are there other things going on than the two screens? Of course, you have ambient light here that looks amazing in the dark. You have door pockets that fit a 1-liter bottle. You have a very big and comfortable armrest with quite a big cubby under there. And the armrest opens both ways. You have 2 cup holders, a wireless charging pad big enough for 2 mobile phones. There is a cubby here under the center armrest or under the center console. And your glove box is of a decent size. Okay, so let's go to the centerpiece of this interior, the infotainment system. Let me first say that the screen, it is sharp, although I think the screen is just a bit too far away, because when I'm sitting like this, I'm driving and I want to touch the screen, I cannot reach it. I have to lean forward a little. So it would have been nice if the screen was just a little bit more forward, maybe on this line here, even though it may look a bit weird from a design perspective. Besides that, the screen is snappy, it is responsive, the graphics are nice. I mean, the Chinese know how to do this. And although I would have liked some physical buttons in this interior, all car interiors, but that is a discussion for another time, for a system where everything is integrated, it is a user-friendly system to use. What is also cool is that there is a speaker here in my backrest, so when calling, for example, I do hear the person talking from behind me, and that actually works really well. But as with all Chinese cars, there are a few things that I call Chinese car quirks. For example, I have to put the climate control on 25 degrees Celsius to get a comfortable temperature in here. And I have to do this in every Chinese car. I don't know why. If I put the climate control on 25 degrees Celsius in any other non-Chinese car, I'll melt away. Then there is no support for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. XPENG calls themselves a technology company, and therefore they want to have control over the whole user experience, so they don't offer Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. But for some people this is a huge minus. And then third, the car likes to make sounds. Yes, changing drive mode. There are sounds. Do you engage or disengage cruise control? There are sounds. Do you put the plug of the charger into the charge port? There is a sound. I mean, why? And luckily all these things can be fixed with a software update, and I mean, they sound like huge complaints, but they are not. They are minor things. And again, minor things that can be fixed with a software update, but they are there for now. But overall, the system, it is a nice system to use, trust me. So what is my final verdict of the XPENG P7? Well, I find it hard to ignore. I mean, where else, besides Tesla, can I get a car for 50,000 euros that is this big, drives this well, is this well built, and with a range of more than 500 kilometers? Let me think, and I'm thinking hard. But I think in Europe, nowhere. The only problem XPENG has is that it is a new brand, and people are wondering, is the brand still there in 5 to 10 years? And that is what makes people hesitant of buying an XPENG. And I do understand that concern. But the XPENG P7 will not be the problem. So that was my review of the XPENG P7. I hope you liked it, and if you did, please give a like. If you have something to say about all of this, please leave a comment, and it would be awesome if you subscribed. And then I would like to say now, thank you a lot for watching, and as always, to be continued.